and today we're going to talk about Chapter 10 in the Rhetorical Act and Chapter 2 in Reading Pop Culture. Thank you for coming back to my channel, and let's get started. So, Chapter 10 talks about opportunities and challenges arising from the rhetor. So, yeah, there will definitely be opportunities and challenges arising, and, yeah, so let's get into that. And so, there's definitions of ethos, and ethos is primarily credibility, but so, ethos is one of the three paths to persuasion, and it's how members of the audience will, the members of the audience will feel about the person that wrote, or the person that is giving this speech, or whatever medium you're using. And so there's always going to be, different things. And let's get into it. I'll bug in here. So first, there's your reputation. That is prior ethos. People know things about you, and that can affect how they will respond to you. Another and kind of similar thing is your appearance, because that is one of the first things people notice, unless by chance no one knows what you look like, and then you're talking with a black screen in front of you. So appearance is another big thing. And then third, is your introduction. That tells a lot about a person, and if you have a really boring introduction and you don't seem to know what you're talking about, then people won't take you seriously. And then there's the context. So that's pretty important, because if I were to talk about things about boys, you're gonna be like, what does she know? She's a girl. That's context. Occasion is similar to that, in that every rhetorical act is limited by the occasion and the place that it is occurring. So, yeah. Ethos is also influenced by the social power, which is the relationship between the rhetor and the audience. And the power in social power talks about how the rhetor has a potential or a chance to influence this audience and make them believe things and act on them, and maybe you want to stand up for feminism, and someone inspired you to do that with their social power. And yeah, that was Chapter 10 in the Rhetorical Act, and now we're going to get down to business with Chapter 2 in Reading Pop Culture. Woo! Gotta love reading pop culture. So, let's make sure that was right. Okay. So, Chapter 2, we're gonna start with Liv Armstrong's The Argument for Being a Poser. Now, this was a very interesting read, because it talked about a girl who had never gone out and done many things, and she stayed home. She was a cheerleader. She got straight A's, blonde, natural hair, never dyed. All these things that she didn't experience until her friends took her to a rave on her 16th birthday, and that is when she wanted to become a punk, but also a raver, which are two completely opposite things. But people called her a poser because she tried to be both, but luckily not at the same time, because that would be some weird outfits. But yeah, she tried to be both because she was curious and she was just experimenting and exploring, and it's okay to be a poser because everyone's a poser. Imagine if she went to a rave and wanted to be like just a punk, and so she would be posing as a punk to see if that's who she really is. And she really enjoyed being both a raver and both a punk because punks were deep and meaningful, and ravers were fun and wore bright colors, and they expressed themselves and were very open. And so therefore she was both, and it's okay because you're trying to find who you are, and especially at 16 like she was, that's a pivotal time for finding who you are. So yeah. So in an argument for being a poser, she's saying that it's okay because everyone's posing, everyone's trying to figure out who they are, so you just do you. So now we're on number 2 by Raquel Cepeda. The N-word is flourishing among Generation Hip Hop Latinos. Why should we care now? So she talks about how she's walking around with her child and hears people just saying it out in the open. But one of them's not even African American, one's a Latino. And she found it really interesting and dug deeper into it. And overall, she found that it just kind of, at least what I got out of it, was sometimes it just means like brother. Because you're embracing them and you're embracing their struggles, and you can relate even though they might not be the same struggles, but they're still struggles, and we all go through struggles. And especially with Mexican or Latino or African Americans, there's a lot of struggles involved there. So they're recognizing each other and they're allowing the Latinos to use the word as well. However, there's a few people who, like, they mentioned a rapper who's Latino, but he's been rapping for about 8 years, and he uses the N-word a good amount of the time. However, there wasn't really backlash until there was a little bit recently. And it's just, this word is always a hot debate, and no one knows how to solve this debate, when in reality it's the fact that they're using this word, even though they're using it as themselves, and though they're using it as kind of an endearing, inviting word to their friends and stuff like that, it's not the most endearing. It did not come from a good background. It was very derogatory, and because of this, them using it kind of sets them back. And I think Raquel Cepeda really thinks that they should stop using it altogether, because that will help them grow from it, and not bring them back down when they make progress in racial battles. And so that was our second one. Number 3, The End of White America by Hua Su. So this gentleman talks about whiteness and what it is, but then there's so many factors in that there's interracial marriage that leads to children. That definitely complexes things. or complicates things. But then there's also certain things, like he talks about The Great Gatsby, where there's this guy Combs, who I don't really know about, and from the article I understood that he was an African American that was a backup dancer for Biggie Smalls. Right, that's his name, Biggie Smalls, yeah. But he is the real life Gatsby, and instead of trying to join other people's parties, he threw his own lavish parties, which out came the yearly white party in the Hamptons that doesn't matter what color you are, you're wearing white. So, in the end, this article talked about how whiteness is really a vessel that we fill with hopes, but also anxieties. So, I don't really know what he got out with of the end of white America. I don't know. Maybe it is the end of white America. Maybe it's the beginning. I don't know. But yeah. Our fourth one is The Sports Taboo by Gladwell. And that one's really interesting because they looked a lot at the demographic that is involved in sports, and they figured maybe there's something here that is causing this specific demographic, this race. Maybe African Americans are better at short distance running, and there's something genetically here that makes them better. Or maybe there's something that makes white men better at lacrosse, but I'm not sure. Because it's not... Race is a big part of sports in that there's definitely some that we are like, oh yeah, basketball's for African Americans, which it's not, it's for whoever wants to play. But there's different things like that. And sports and race has come a long way, but it needs to go further. And let's see. Okay, and our last one is Impression Management in a Networked Setting by Dana Boyd. And in this one, Dana Boyd actually talks about how social networking is very complicated in figuring out who we are, especially if we're teenagers, and our identity. And so things that are posted on the internet are there forever, and we need to always know that and remember that. And we also need to know that companies do background checks on you when they want to hire you. So if you're underage, don't be posting that picture of you holding a beer. Use your brain, use your noggin. It's there forever. They'll find it. So it also can have a very negative sense in that you are scared to post certain things because you don't know how it will be perceived. But therefore you can't express yourself. And it's very tricky and complex. And sometimes in the wrong context, things can look really bad. And it makes things really hard, especially for teens. And we just need to think about how decisions affect others, and what we post is there forever. And it's just a lot of different things like that. So impression management in a network setting, thanks to this social media theorist, Boyd talks about how complex it is to process identity on social media.